public policy manager at Equality Ohio, and I use they, them pronouns. House Bill 68 violates the rights of parents, youth, and families to make choices about their bodies and futures in a way that we would never allow in any other medical situation. Equality Ohio is opposed to HB 68 because it would be harmful to transgender youth. It would set a dangerous precedent in banning medical best practices, and it's based on junk science. And I expand upon this in my written comment about the statistics and researches and consequences of legislation. But today, I'd like to talk about why this matters to me as someone very intimately familiar with navigating the American healthcare system. So supporters of HB 68 appear to have two main arguments. This is that young people and their families are simply too immature or uninformed to make these kinds of medical decisions, and that the practices and medications used of gender-affirming care are dangerous and damaging. But today, I'd like to share my personal story that illustrates why these arguments are completely unfounded by placing this issue back into the broader context of pediatric medicine. You see, I didn't have a normal young adult life. I spent much of my teen years living in pediatric hospitals fighting a rare, life-threatening blood disease. And ultimately, I became the first successful bone marrow transplant of someone with my underlying disease in North America in 2018. So if anyone in this room understands what it's like to consent to irreversible, life-altering medications as a minor, it's me. My treatment required years of off-label drugs, mental health treatment, hormones, fertility treatment, and decisions about my body between the ages of 13 and 18. Today, I live with the ramifications of decisions that I made at 16 years old. And I simply do not believe that the stories of transgender youth and their families within our medical system are any different than mine. Now, I do understand that when we say that this care is life-saving, we need to specify what exactly we mean. In my case, it was the opportunity to pursue on my own terms the treatments that my parents and I wanted. It was life-saving, not only because it explicitly saved me from death at that time, but because it greatly improved my day-to-day quality of life. In fact, many of the choices that my parents and I made, even in a life-threatening rare illness situation, were focused on my quality and perception of myself. And these too were life-saving. And they're important to life-saving, and they're important to transgender youth too. Trans and gender nonconforming youth and their parents are making life-affirming and life-saving decisions together. And the idea that youth, like myself at one point, are incapable of understanding and weighing those decisions is insulting to the Ohio families, youth, and medical providers that make these kinds of decisions every day in a different context. In fact, the experience of gender-affirming care is incredibly typical in the broader scope of American pediatric medicine. Take it from someone who had a rare disease, who grew up in pediatric hospitals. For example, while off-label use of medication is often painted by opponents of gender-affirming care as proof that treatment is experimental or rare, it's estimated that up to 70% of all medications prescribed for minors are off-label use. If one categorizes the off-label use of medication in pediatrics for patients like me truly as experimentation, then they would effectively be arguing that all pediatric medicine as you know it is one big science experiment. And you would never say that to my oncologist. Other criticisms raised by opponents are common systemic issues within our healthcare system for patients of all times, like short time spent with doctors and long wait times. But these all also are problems that would be worsened, not mitigated by banning treatment completely. This is really normal, boring healthcare. This is physician-recommended medical care. And it's important to see it for what it is. It's just healthcare. Now, the American medical system is not perfect, and medical decision-making is never easy. But I trust the families, youth, social workers, medical professionals, and the people in this room today to make these choices correctly for themselves. I know these doctors are good people who care about kids because I was one of them. I was one of those kids. And my family trusted those doctors, and these families trust those doctors today. And I believe in them, and you should too. I'm open to any questions.
Thank you very much for your testimony today. Committee, questions? Representative Stewart.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for your testimony. I read all your testimony. Obviously, I've listened to it. I didn't see, again, any mention of what is a big component of this bill, which is surgery. So I'll ask your organization as well. Does Equality Ohio believe that it should be legal in the state of Ohio to remove the penis and testicles of a 15-year-old boy or the breast of a 15-year-old girl as treatment for gender dysphoria?
We are repeating our greatest hits, I see.
Nobody's answered it yet. Maybe you will.
So, you know, I'm not a doctor. Equality Ohio does not represent doctors, and we firmly believe in the opinions of our medical associations and psychologists, and so we back our doctors. You know, we really believe that we should be going with what the doctors are saying, and if the doctors are saying that that's not happening in Ohio, then that is what we believe as well.
Well, I'm going to follow up, Mr. Chairman. That wasn't the question, though. The question was, should it be legal in Ohio? And it's a fairly simple yes-no. It's not a gotcha question.
Yeah.
But it's amazing that you don't want to answer it. Should it be legal to do that on children, or should it not be legal to do that on children?
So through the chair, I just want to restate that we are in alignment with what the pediatric hospitals and associations have already previously said. Multiple times at this point. We are in alignment with the statements of physicians. If they do not believe that this should be legal, then Equality Ohio supports that position.
Follow up, Mr. Chairman? So is that, you think should be legal so long as your preferred doctors group says it should be legal, but if they say it should not be legal, you would agree with them? I'm genuinely trying to understand.
So I am not here to make a medical statement. I am not a doctor. I do not feel comfortable making medical statements. I am happy to answer your question and say that if the pediatric hospitals do not believe that it should be legal, neither do we. But we back doctors. We believe that they know what they're doing. And if they don't think that it should be legal, neither should we.
One last follow-up. I have been reading your organization for as long as I've been in public office with the same talking point that essentially every bill that we're talking about in this building that you don't like means that we're going to deter businesses from investing in the state. You said it before Intel came. You said it before our hospitals all across the state have expanded. You said it before Honda announced they're going to develop one of the largest electric vehicle manufacturing plants in the world in Ohio. Do you have any actual data to back up this point that you continue to make over and over and over again?
So we do have data. I'd be happy to provide that data afterward. I do not have it on me today. But if I might speak from personal experience for a moment. So I'm 25. I'm Gen Z. All of my friends have left this state. And those that are here are literally embarrassed to be associated with it. And we often say, we joke all the time, that if you go anywhere in this country, there are people from Ohio there, it's because they left. And I am so tired of having to watch my friends and family leave this state because they are literally embarrassed. That is embarrassing. That's embarrassing for every single person in this room. And I could not possibly believe that they wouldn't somehow impact our economy and how we are hiring and developing our workforce. Because my friends don't want to stay here. And that's enough.
Well, I'm confused now. Your friends are fleeing Ohio because we introduced HB 68 and we're holding these hearings. Why did your friends leave?
Well, they don't feel safe here anymore. I mean, imagine being a kid, a trans kid. Many parents in this room also have transgender children. And if you read through the testimonies, and I get the honor of reading so many of these testimonies and working with these families. And the thing that they talk about is the fear. The fear associated with this bill being introduced is really substantial. I have had families call me upon the introduction of this bill every single year and ask me if they need to leave now. These kids, I also get the honor of working with many of our trans youth. These kids are scared because when they see this on the news, when their parents are talking about it, when they're being used as political pawns in the media, they feel that. They know that they're not welcome here. And so they make plans to leave as soon as they possibly can. I have so many friends. I actually do have friends that have left because of anti-trans legislation in Ohio. And every single time, you never know what piece of legislation is going to be the nail in someone's coffin.
There is no anti-trans legislation in Ohio. We've been discussing it and debating it. And in the recent studies from 2022, Ohio was the third most sought-after state for business relocations, including 48 companies from California. So everybody's not leaving. Representative King.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for sharing your personal story. I'd like to follow up on the question that Representative Stewart presented to you, and I'd like to reframe it, since you did share your personal story with your rare blood disease, and I'm grateful that you were able to find the treatment to address that. But do you think that it is okay for doctors to remove perfectly healthy body parts from children under the age of 18?
Well, first of all, I've always thought that this question was very silly because as someone that experienced what I did with the medical system, I know lots of friends, actually, people in my own life that have had breast tissue or major surgeries because of a disease. And so I understand what the consent process is like for minors, and we do it in Ohio all the time. When it comes to this situation, once again, I'm not a doctor. I believe in the right and the ability of medical professionals in our state to make those decisions. Surgeries aren't currently happening in Ohio, and if they're not happening, it's because they probably shouldn't be happening. And I believe that the doctors have already very thoroughly stated that that is the case. So,
Follow up, thank you. I did not ask for a medical opinion. I asked for your personal opinion. Do you feel that it's acceptable for a young child to have their body parts removed, healthy body parts?
I mean, again, I really believe that the medical context there matters. We do heart surgeries on infants. So we do remove the body parts of infants regularly for other medical reasons. I think, again, that the medical situation really matters, and it's up to everyone's own discretion what's right for them and their bodies. But, when in terms of gender-affirming care, those surgeries aren't being provided in Ohio, so I don't necessarily believe that the question is relevant.
Up to you.
Again, my question is not damaged body parts or organs. Healthy body parts, sexual organs, breast of young women. Do you personally, not a medical opinion, do you believe it is appropriate to remove healthy body tissue and body parts?
So, through the chair. So when it comes to breast removal and augmentation, I think that that's very different, as the physicians have already kind of talked about. People get breast implants, like survivors get breast tissue removed. This is very, very common for Ohio's young people and something that parents have been able to consent to for a long time. Do I think that, again, I'm just going to state, surgeries aren't happening here. And I've been asked this question 3 times, and I'm done answering it. So if anyone else has another question, I'd be happy to answer it.
You're done answering it, but you didn't answer it. So we'll just make sure we point that out as a matter of the record. Representative Samani.
Through the chair, again, it's the perspective of how you look at things, but somebody who's experiencing gender dysphoria, somebody who doesn't recognize the body that they're in, may not feel that those organs are healthy and normal, and they may feel that the only way they can live in the body that they want to live in is to consider surgery. Surgery is not always the end point at which people recognize their identity. For some people, it is living in the gender they want to be living in. For some people, it's surgery. But To assume that everyone is going to have the endpoint of surgery is a huge misconception and assumption. So I think this questioning really has nothing to do with the bill. It's like asking someone who asks me for a hysterectomy because they're having pelvic pain or they're having bleeding every month that's not controlled by medical management, for them to say, take out the organ. Yes, it's a healthy organ, but it's an organ that's causing problems for them. So the question is the wrong question.
Representative Zamani, thank you for answering the witness's question for her, since she refused to. You just said that the question about surgeries is irrelevant to this bill when the entire bill's premise is no surgeries under 18 in Ohio. How are those two not connected?
Because every witness has said that surgeries are not performed under the age of 18. You are asking for a law that is not something that's done in Ohio. So why are we creating laws when physicians are trained to determine what is appropriate medical care, what is appropriate surgical care? Why are we creating laws in that space?
Any additional questions of the witness? Thank you very much for being with us today. At this time, I want to back up.